Hi there, my name's Richard McMunn, and for the duration of this short presentation I'm going to teach you how to predict interview questions. Yes, that's right, it really is quite simple. Before you go along to any interview, follow the tips that I'm about to provide you with and you will be able to predict a large number of the interview questions that you will get asked. Okay, now what you need to do this is basically the person specification for the job that you're applying for. So the person specification is basically a document. It's a blueprint that sets out the requirements for the role, and you will notice on the person specification that there are the desirable and the essential criterias. Okay, so you need to get yourself a copy of the person specification. The other kind of document that you would normally come across when preparing for an interview is the job description. And you can usually get asked a question during the interview that goes along the lines of, can you tell us about the role? What do you know about the role? You can get that information from both the person specification and the job description. So I've already mentioned about the desirables and the essentials. These are very important. When you look at the person specification, you should be able to see both sets of these. The desirables are basically, as it says, it's basically nice to have, and you should try and match as many of these as possible. Now the essentials basically means that you must have these in order to carry out the role and be successful at that interview, and it is your job to align all of the essentials and also as many of the desirables as possible when you're preparing for your interview. So let's take a quick look at a sample person specification, and I'm going to tell you the process that I use when preparing for interviews. Okay, so this is basically for a customer services advisor. Now you can use this process when applying for any kind of job. Now you'll see there that it's got the basic criteria, and it is this information on the right hand side that I'm going to use to predict the interview questions. You will see there it says a minimum of 1 year's clerical and cash handling experience in a busy customer service environment. There is a question in there that says, can you provide an example of where you've handled cash in a busy customer service environment, or where you've actually worked in a clerical role in a busy customer service environment? So what you will do then is prepare a response to that question. You can see there it will say, have you got experience of communicating with customers and colleagues both face to face and by telephone to achieve satisfactory outcomes for the customer? And again, there are a number of questions that you can extract from that sentence. One of them is, can you give us an example of where you've communicated with customers on a face-to-face level or by telephone? And an add-on question could be, once you've told them when you have been in that situation, is what would be your considerations when you're dealing with a customer? Obviously you want to be polite, you want to listen to their needs intently, and you want to make sure that you match their expectations. So I'm hoping now that you're beginning to understand how I predict interview questions, and it does work. Here's another one: maintain accurate records including updating computer records whilst dealing with customers. So they want to see whether you can multitask. They might say, can you give us an example of when you have used computer records at the same time whilst dealing with customers? They may want to know the kind of database experience and work that you have in a previous role. Another one, using information technology to gather information. So it would not be unreasonable to suggest that the interviewer might want to know about your experiences in relation to IT. Says there, maintaining a calm approach and working effectively under pressure. Can you give us an example of where you have worked under pressure in order to achieve objectives and goals? They may say to you, how do you approach pressure at work? How do you find working under pressure? And you can say, well, obviously I work in a methodical manner and I make sure that I am calm at all times. So you can see there, again, more questions coming out at us, proving a flexible approach to a variety of work. What are you like at work? Are you a flexible person? That's another interview question. Working as part of a team, supporting and encouraging colleagues. Can you give us an example of when you've worked effectively as part of a team? What are you like as a team player? What would be your considerations in that team? And so the list goes on. So you can see that just by following that, it is very easy to predict the question. So Here's a sample questions that I've taken from the person specification, and this is how I would prepare. Can you give me an example of when you have worked in a busy customer service environment? Can you give me an example of when you've handled cash in a customer service environment? What would be your considerations? Okay, so obviously you have to be methodical. You've got to think about security. You've got to have your wares about you, checking the environment all the time, because it can be a dangerous situation when handling cash, so you need to be careful, especially in front of other people. Do you have any experience of communicating with customers and colleagues, both face to face and by telephone? And give me an example of when you've resolved an issue that had arisen from initial point of contact through to resolution. Do you have any experience of inputting data into a computer, and what database experience do you have? How do you deal with pressure in the workplace? And the last four, please provide me with an example of when you have worked effectively as part of a team. Can you give me a time when you've had to be flexible in the workplace? And please provide an example of where you have worked alone to carry out a difficult task. What were your considerations? What is the best example of customer service you have witnessed? And I've taken those 10 questions directly from that person specification. So my advice is, when you're preparing for any interview whatsoever, is to get yourself a copy of the person specification. Then get yourself a highlighter pen and go through the essential and desirable criteria, and you can predict the interview questions. So get yourself to www.howtobecome.co.uk for more free information and resources on how to pass any interview.